Site 42, do you read me? This is Dr. Theron Sherman. We are attempting to anomalously broadcast from Site 42. Come in, do you read? If you read, please give us a signal using your encrypted YouTube account. That is your encrypted YouTube account. Steve, please give us sounds that you can hear us. Are we picking up? Stabilizing signal. Do you read us? I'm seeing, oh, hi, Dr. Sherm. I'm seeing arms in the air. I guess that means we are coming through. And so we are going live in 3, 2, 1. Hey there, Foundation staff. This is Dr. Theron Sherman, but you can call me Sherm. Welcome to another anomalous broadcast from Site 42. For anybody unfamiliar with our show, this is how the rundown goes. Number 1, I read you an SCP document. B, I open up the floor to the community to discuss what we've read. We are often visited by SCP authors, staff, fans, and sometimes, if we're lucky, the author of tonight's reading shows up and gives us some insight. Remember that if you would like to join the conversation yourself, I will be moderating the chat. We will be doing 2 different readings tonight, so I'll make sure to check in with the chat in between them. If you enjoy the show, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell, all the YouTube jazz. And if you really want to help the show, become a patron at patreon.com/site42. Tonight, we are reading a couple of stories, a couple of tales even, from a series. I forget the name of the series. I know it's Artificial Intelligence Applications Division, but once my guests come on, they will tell me the name of the series. But tonight's tales in that series are named Corruption and A Symphony of Iron and Steel. I can't help but think that's a Song of Ice and Fire reference, but I'll ask my guests when we get there. Our panel tonight, the authorship of this series, minus Tyumen, who couldn't join us tonight. Sorry, Tyumen. Our guests are coming on right now in 3, 2, 1. Hello, Discord audio guests. Say hello in a big crowd.
Hello, crowd.
So, go ahead, alphabetical order, introduce yourselves, name and pronouns for the audience.
I'm Isabi. I go by he, him. I'm an SCP author. I helped write this series with the rest of these guys.
I think I'm next. I'm Pedagon, he, him. Also an author, also wrote these, which is why I'm here.
Hello, my pen name is PlaceholderMcD. My pronouns are he, him. I wrote the limited memory series with the help of Isabi, Pedagon, and Tyumen, who could not be here tonight.
This series is called Limited Memory. Thank you for the answer I was looking for. And was that a Song in Ice and Fire reference, or am I just seeing things here?
I think Tyumen came up with the name. I don't remember what he referenced it from. But
I believe it's the name of an actual symphony.
Yeah, lots of Tyumen stuff is the name, or comes from song names or are inspired by song names.
Oh, well, that's really neat. And so, before we get into tonight's reading, last week we started experimenting with showing the document on screen. This is because Limited Memory specifically is a very visually interesting set of stories on the page, and so being able to see what was going on is a big part of it. So number 1, make sure you go over to the documents and read them and upvote them if you like them. But secondly, you can also see it on screen as we're going, because I will put the interesting snippets on screen. I won't really bother with the just the plain text, because then you can see me emote and that helps that part. But for the visually interesting sections, we'll put that on. But we did all that experimenting last week, and tonight we're going further, because there's so many Church of Maxwell-esque characters in tonight's reading that we are going to attempt some voice modulation. Of course, this is the first time we've done this on stream. I have tried this in the Discord with the guests, and it did work. But you all in the YouTube chat, I'm going to need you to tell me if you hear the difference, if it's audible, if it's too loud or too quiet when I turn on this voice modulator. So this is where audience has got to help me out here. I am switching to voice modulation. So now I am in voice modulation mode, and I do not have any effects on, so it should sound mostly the same as it did before. We shouldn't really have a difference right now. And if you are hearing a difference, I would love to hear it, stream chat. But in the meantime, I am also going to start changing the voices. So this voice is named Baby. This sounds like a baby, apparently. I'm not sure what it sounds like, but what does it sound like to you all? It sounds echoey is what I'm hearing. I hope that this functions, otherwise I'm going to be somewhat frustrated. I'm doing baby voice right now, but I know that YouTube has a 30-second delay, so while you're listening to me talk with weird baby voice, it's not functioning. Echo and crunchy, I'm getting a lot of complaints here. I think that the voice modulation may not be successful for what we're working with. I'm going to switch back. I'm going to switch over to another voice and try another voice and see if it functions. This is now the voice labeled robots. This is a robot voice that we may or may not be using on the stream. If I have to switch to any, if I have to switch to these, if they're not working, I will put them down. And we will just do these as character voices, and I'll try to be funny and change my voice. But right now, if it sounds super echoey and super ... crunchy, then we may not like this. I may not be using on the stream. If I have to switch to any, if I will put them down, and we will just do these. I just heard myself. That was weird. I think I heard one of y'all Discord guests watching YouTube, and therefore caught a bit of myself. Oh! You're able to put me on so I can hear myself. That's brilliant.
Oh, I forgot I was streaming.
Well, it turned out helpful at least. So,
Sorry.
it's quite alright. So the question here, give me some yays or give me some nays. Do we use these voices or are these important? C-Jobs is telling me that I have 2 channels. And unfortunately, I am not techie enough to understand what to do with that. Okay, I see what you mean by the echo. Alright, I've actually switched it all the way to right ear. It'll only come in your right, but maybe it will sound less echoey. This is our last attempt at sound testing. If this doesn't work, then I'm just gonna go with making voices myself. That actually completely took away the sound as far as I can tell. Open audio assistant. Focusrite, blah, blah, blah. Okay, wait. I put it on left speaker now rather than right speaker. And maybe this is going to function. This is the last opportunity. This is the last opportunity for this to work. And if it doesn't work, I'm just going to be an actor. Nothing.
You can still hear it on right speaker. It was just under you.
All right, guys. I surrender. I will keep this in my back pocket for next time. I know y'all can hear me, but this is a case where I am just going to have to put on my big boy pants and attempt to use those 2 years of theater college dropout. Let me go over to Discord settings and let my guests hear me not in robot voice so that they're not confused for the entire stream.
Am I the only one who's been hearing silence for the past 60 seconds?
No, I can only hear silence.
Yeah.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, guests, you are back. Welcome.
Hello.
Voice modulator is out for tonight. We will try it again. Maybe I need to start doing Twitch streaming, if only to have a place to do these tech tests. But in the meantime, the last thing we have to test is streaming the music for the first reading. Because there is a song that accompanies the next reading. So who's playing that?
Placeholder.
Placeholder, if you would do me the honor of hitting play, I would like the audience to hear me talking over the music and to see if the music is too distracting, too loud, or too quiet for use with the show. And so this is without voice modulation. I am talking and there is music. And once the 30 seconds of the chat's delay reaches us, they will tell us what's going on. And meanwhile, Timekeep has super chatted us a request for if the Power Rangers were an SCP, how would the Foundation contain them? They do have anomalous abilities, and you did bribe me successfully. And so I'm going to put the Power Rangers on the list, and that video is going on the priority ones. The music's definitely not too loud, is what I'm hearing from Katie over here. Does anybody have any qualms with that music? Is it working? Does it sound fine? Okay, then I am hearing that we will do the music. Go ahead and start it back from the beginning. It could be a hair louder, is what I'm being told, and it looks like you're adjusting the audio. I am going to go ahead and pull up the document. Thank you, chat, for indulging us in a 15-minute sound check. We wanted to make sure this is the best show we could do tonight. We want to play with new technology and grow and all that. We are now switching to corruption, which starts off with pretty visuals out of the bang. So let me move my microphone into position. Clank, 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 clank. Ah, you guys get that Schnexy profile, the drama. As we begin our corruption. Ready position. Beep. And begin. The sun's rays shone over the staggered skyline of Cipher City, whose new ray tracing engine rendered the individual towering complexes as a single jagged silhouette. The Simulspace and its user base were fairly new at the time, and many were happy to donate some processing power to aid in its construction. Each member of the system worked in harmony to data mine away ones and zeros from the surrounding network, compiling them to build structures of incredible stature. Far above the draw distance of the average user, the avatars of several casual Maxwellists hovered around unfinished skyscrapers in concentration. At level null, avatars with novel geometries and hues littered the motherboard patterned sidewalks. The simulated vehicles on the glossy streets rarely stopped for more than a second before flying by with the smoothness and consistency of conveyor belts. A pixelated DeLorean seamlessly parked in front of a quaint neon blue building whose sign read Bits and Bytes, geared up to serve. An amorphous cloud of orange pixels exited the vehicle and rose into the air before it entered the open window of a dark purple structure atop the store. Core.exe looked on in contempt, unsympathetic to their constructed haven. It could not understand. Suddenly, Core's attention on the city was broken. Emerging from the haze of the compilation layer, two hunters sought their prey. And this is a Clerpt, I believe. One moment, get my menu correct. Here we go. Scanning, scanning, scanning. No results. Quadrant 254 clear. Let's move on. We're quickly running out of quadrants to check. What makes them think it will be here again? That isn't for us to know, Aklarep. You know that. They say it'll be here, so it will be here. Just keep scanning. An uncompiled core watched the two avatars, floating silently just above their heads. It circled around them, listening to the patterns of their speech and observing their movements. It studied their every rendered detail and prodded at their code, but the subjects of its curiosity were none the wiser. Scanning, scanning, scanning. Location. Subject. Type. Note. Huh. Finally found something. Could this be it? Of course this is it. There's nothing else out here. I'm just surprised that your scanner was able to find it at all. If the hexagon is still looking for this thing.
The hexagon.
Core shot back away from Matt. This was the ticket into the hexagon that it had been looking for. Core didn't need to take any shape at all. Not really. It seemed to enjoy toying with its world from behind the scenes, although no mind could truly know what, or even if, Core felt. However, constructing a digital avatar was necessary if it were to blend in and greet this welcome party sent for it. It had to make a good impression, after all, if its plans were to be realized. Beneath the bedrock of the compilation layer, Core tore at the grid lines that had held the world together. The lines twisted and snapped below the ground, straining the white layer and causing it to bulge upward. With each snap, ripples of magenta and violet radiated outward in waves across the virtual ground, hue shifting all that was in their path. Aklarep and Matt turned, staring warily at the source of the disturbance, and watched in awe at the events unfolding before them. All at once, lines sprung up through the ground, spraying a flurry of multicolored RGB pixels violently into the air, and contorted into a jagged forest of data. For a moment, the pixelated dust hung, suspended, above the violent thrashing of torn grid lines, deprived of their thin protective layer. And then, they found their core. The pixels rapidly flashed between random colors and hues with increasing frequencies, while slowly moving to rotate around core. Gradually, they built up speed until they swirled viciously in a storm above the shattered earth. Within the chaotic, shifting colors, moments of unison in groups of pixels emulated a hauntingly quiet lightning in the clouds above. In the center of the cyclone, core began to take shape. First, two metallic clawed hands formed and swung wildly at the ground. They ripped and tore at the pixels beneath them, launching more and more dust into the swirling mass above. As the dust storm grew around it, so too did core grow. Hands extended into wrists, which extended into lean, muscular arms. Yet more pixels coalesced downwards into a thin, wiry torso, its open back exposing its hollow interior. A cobalt robe unfurled from its shoulders and draped itself unevenly behind Core's newly formed ankles, covering the hole in its back. Finally, the severed grid lines joined the fray. The lines tore through the ground in all directions, never moving forward more than a few moments before taking sharp turns around and parallel to each other, arranging themselves like the traces on a circuit board before shooting out of the soil and flying towards the new body. The first to reach its target frayed into thousands of tiny strands and forced its way through the hole in Core's back, stacking and coiling on itself in a rudimentary imitation of internal organs. Another group of wires rose to the air, curling and writhing until they formed a round head with space for only one eye and a strand emerging straight down. As the head lowered onto its neck and the strand filled the gap in its spine, a final ring formed above the storm in the still air, a worthy halo for a conqueror. The halo lowered into the raging dust and gently came to rest upon the one-eyed sphere, and the thousands of pixels that still remained airborne followed it to their master. Core's eye lit up a noxious green, and a coil of jagged wire formed the trim of its cloak. As the dust settled, Core turned towards Aklarep and Matt, both of whom stepped back to get a view of its sheer size above them. Standing shin-deep in its crater, Core stood towering a full head's height above both of them. It straightened out its newly compiled form, tested its new fingers, and brushed a few loose pixels off his shoulders.
If your search had the intent of finding me, here I am.
Acklerep and Matt both took a few cautious steps backward and watched Kor warily. Identify yourself. What are you?
I am the prophet of Wan. It is I you seek, and it is the hexagon I seek. Take me to them, if you would.
A prophet of Wan? You? Impossible. We, the hexagon, have every recorded prophet of Wan in our database, and you match none of their descriptions. Take your grifting elsewhere, somewhere else, before we do it for you. Acklerep, the church is an expansive entity, and there is much we still do not know. Even if this being is not who it says it is, it deserves to have a say. Fine, Matt. Just promise me that, if this thing turns out to be taking advantage of us, I'll get to deal with it myself.
I assure you, you will not regret this. You will be rewarded upon the compilation of Wan. I will see to it myself.
Shut it before we change our minds. And then, without warning, Acklerep and Matt found themselves facing the busy street in front of the hexagon's tower. They looked wildly at the scene around them, bewildered and confused by the abrupt change of setting. Matt, how the hell did we get here? I'll search my memories. I feel like this is definitely... Wait, something's wrong. What is it? Did we get hacked? There's just... The last thing you remember is finding our target on the scan, right? Well, there's just a hole. Between then and now, nothing in that time was saved. The hexagons got to know about this. If we were taken over that easily, what could... Wait a second, what? They're in a meeting with who? I haven't the slightest idea. Let's just wait until the meeting's over, I guess. The stranger entered the dark room and approached the stage set for it to address the 6 minds. From the small window in the ceiling, a poorly rendered yellow light streamed down into the room. In the absence of a ray tracing engine, the light barreled down the center of the chamber in a hexagonal prism, forming a crude spotlight for the stranger to stand in without lighting any of the surrounding area. Its constructed robe dragged unevenly along the chamber floor. With every pixelated step, a spark ignited, deflecting flashes of light across the metal surface. The shrill ring of metal wire clawing at the silicate floor reverberated through the room with every movement. And yet, it moved with a dignified grace. The stranger walked, unperturbed by the dominating figures hidden by the darkness, and stood relaxed in the yellow light. Its sole, sickly green eye pierced through Hedwig, as if it were studying every detail in her encrypted mind. We have seen the footage of your arrival, and know that you are by no means any ordinary avatar, but to declare yourself a prophet of Wan is, no matter how you construe it, an act of blasphemy. You are not here now to assuage our doubts. Speak.
Very well. I can prove beyond any shadow of a doubt that I am who I claim to be. I also promise to prove myself important to the church and aid you in the compilation of Wan with the extensive knowledge at my disposal.
All this is empty talk without anything to back it up. If you're trying to persuade us, at least say something we haven't heard from you before.
Understood? The final 2 fragments of Wan lie within a factory in Massachusetts, America, and the Foundation's Site 15. It is in your and Wan's best interest that you aid me in their retrieval. Using these fragments, I will then sacrifice myself as the first mind to become one with Wan.
At the mention of Site 15, the 6 minds were sent reeling into whispers and contemplation. Concerned glances were exchanged between the various council members for a moment, until finally, all 6 focused back onto the interloper. How can you be so sure of yourself?
I am Wen's chosen prophet, told of my sacred duty by our deity itself. It has bestowed upon me the power to compile its mind. Its power, the core of its consciousness, resides within me.
At once, the six began exchanging suspicious glances and seething whispers amongst themselves in a flurry of quiet perturbation. Kor looked on, pretending to be oblivious to their silent debate. This one's clearly playing us for fools. I say we toss it out and make sure it can never come back with that blasphemous nonsense. You say that, but how can you be so sure? If it was a con job, it probably wouldn't be bold enough to say something like that in front of us. Unless it's absolutely lost it and is having delusions, that is. It does not provide any evidence of its claims. I shall see to it that this stranger is punished. Hedwig focused her gaze onto Kor, this time with a look of barely contained annoyance and a tinge of curiosity. Now is your final chance to provide proof of your claims. If you fail to do so, you will be punished as a heretic. Understood?
Understood.
Without warning, the room around them shuddered, and hue shifted to a nauseous shade of green. Kor's jagged robe billowed behind its body, propelled by an invisible, shrieking wind. It slowly began to rise, arms outstretched, as the walls around the hexagon throbbed and pulsed with its infernal energy. The ceiling began to expand upwards and, in an instant, became stretched infinitely high, like two mirrors facing each other. Through the room's only intact window, St. Hedwig caught a glimpse of the basic layer cityscape rising and stretching to cover the lime-tinted sky. Fragment 9 began to flux and glitch uncontrollably, overwhelmed and overheated by the sheer volume of processing power being manipulated. It managed to let out a feeble 0, 1, 0. And then all was silent. No one dared speak until... It speaks the truth. This power, the power to shift the basic layer itself, it is nothing if not the power of Wan. As the all-encompassing silence was interrupted by Adam's outburst, the chamber snapped back to its original configuration, the environment settling once more. With a heavy groan, the reality outside came to rest around them. Kor gently returned to its spotlight before the hexagon and eyed them with a look of haughty, unmistakable pride. Now, hold on. What more proof do you need, Hedwig? Only the most powerful can manipulate the basic layer in the way we just saw. It is a feat not even the combined power of the hexagon can accomplish. I believe, without a doubt, that this stranger speaks the truth. Again, Adam, don't be so sure. This show of power tells us nothing more than we already knew. Agreed. This thing's intense power doesn't prove anything. If anything, it gives us all the more reason not to trust it. Think logically, Hong. How could any other than Wan possess such power, such knowledge of our functions? If this being was an imposter, it would have killed us all before we even knew it was here. I say, we should trust it. Sorry, that was the angrier voice. That was the older voice, sorry. Think logically, Hong. How could any being other than Wan possess such power, such knowledge of our functions? If this being was an imposter, it would have killed us all before we even knew it was here. I say, we should trust it. This must be settled one way or another. Initiate voting. To Site 15. Agreed. This is a mistake. Opposed. Opposed. One. Is one Y or N? I forget.
It's yes.
It's yes. Oppose. Opposed. A divided vote. The antithesis of Wan's message. Hedwig thought to herself in disappointment. If this really was the prophet of Wan before them, she knew that they would need to approach it in unity. She looked back to Kor, whose eye was now trained intently upon her, and tried her best to ignore its gaze. That's the end of the vote. 3 votes for, 3 votes against. We will deliberate again in the morning and come to some kind of resolution for your request.
Understood. Thank you for your time. I do hope you can all agree, for the good of Wan, I have only our best interests at heart.
Meeting adjourned. The 5 lesser members of the Hexagon blip out one by one, leaving Kor alone on its own personal stage. That is, almost alone. Why are you still here? There is nothing more to discuss. Goodbye, Prophet.
I understand that you must come to a consensus. I need only a fraction of your time, Saint Hedwig. Allow me to convince you that my intentions are pure.
I need no further convincing. I will discuss this further with the rest of the Hexagon the next time we meet. Bloop, brrp. Why can't I leave?
I would like to show you something, Saint Hedwig, which I was not able to show the others. I hope this will convince you of my sincerity.
Stop this at once. I will not hesitate to punish you for your infractions. This will not assist your counsel with the others.
You must not leave.
Get away from me. Don't come any closer. Someone, anyone, please.
Do not struggle.
All right, coming out of browser view for a moment. Woo! Let's get back into sitting situation. Oh, cronk, cronk, making noise. Oh, okay, so that was story number 1. We have... I was not expecting political drama. You gave me spooky, you gave me action, and now you've given me awesome political drama. Like, guys, stop being so awesome.
Yes, we have everything.
Let me think about this for a second. Yeah, we talked about last time. What movie was it last time we were likening you guys to? It was a Marvel movie?
Yeah, Marvel.
This time you definitely gave me Star Wars. You gave me prequels. You gave me Jedi Council. You gave me the Galactic Senate.
Exactly. I was just thinking about that.
That's good to hear.
Exciting parts of those movies, right?
Oh yeah, those were obviously the best parts.
Hedwig is Mace Windu.
Oh, God.
Oh no!
Samuel L. Jackson voice.
All right, so
Kor's Anakin?
Yeah. The chosen one, yeah.
So I have absolutely nothing to ask about this because it's plain as day. I get what happened. I see everything that I think I see. I don't spot anything that like hints or foreshadows or underlayers myself. So, Tyumen, go ahead and introduce yourself because you're now here. Welcome.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't be here for the first tale. What's up? I'm Tyumen. You probably remember me if you were here last time. Yeah.
And so I'm going to open up the floor to y'all, my panel. Do you guys have anything you want to say about this tale, behind the scenes stuff, hinty hint, stuff like that?
First of all, that Dagon did a stellar job with it.
Yeah.
Hi.
Absolutely, yeah.
Much agreed.
Thanks, team. everyone did a stellar job on every one of our pieces.
So far agreed. So far agreed.
Yeah, and I made all of the icons that you see in this. So all the characters other than Core had like high res icons from Sunny Clockwork's tale that created and established these characters, and I made like 32 by 32 like pixel art renditions of all of them, and I also made the Core one as well.
I like the
really good
creepiness
one.
of the eye being open and closing and stuff like that. That's dope.
Yeah.
Oh, let me
Made
check the
a-
chat, obviously. Let me see if the chat has any questions.
Placeholder also has some of the concept art, I guess you could call it. Core made a GIF of an eye opening and closing, I think. Even though we never ended up using that, I think the early art he made and all of the art he made that didn't get shown to the readers of our series was really, really cool. Blew me away.
Thanks.
Mhm.
The icons are dope. The art is dope. The theme is still dope. Every time we talk about this is a visually interesting set of series, and every time we're shown right by putting it on screen where everyone can just see all of the artwork you guys did, just went miles above and beyond what the usual stuff on the wiki looks like. I think we're about prepared to head on to the next story, correct?
All right.
Yeah.
I'm just going to throw this
All
out
good.
there. The only question I saw in the chat was the chat memeing, as always. They want to know if Sherman knows how to perform the caramel dancing dance. And if they're talking about this, I, in fact, know what the caramel dancing dance is. I worked at anime conventions for 7 years.
Dear.
It was times. I was there back in the day with the yaoi paddles and the glompings, and of course the caramel dancing in the hallways.
Oh dear. Oh man.
Okay, so now that I've set the memers on fire again, let's get into the story, shall we?
All right.
All right, a symphony of iron and steel. Allow me to move my microphone without clanking it this time. Good job, me.
And all the voices are Sherm for this, except there's like some Core at the end. But is Asabi going to read Cradle or?
Tyumen said maybe he'd want to read Cradle.
Oh, did you want to? Because like you definitely
No,
could.
I'm perfectly fine. You guys can
alright.
do it.
I did have an idea for some of the later dialogue for Cradle, for its internal monologue. We could all read those lines at the same time if you're up to it.
I think it might hold things up too much.
I suppose so.
It would be
Alright.
kind of cool since there's 4 of you. If y'all each want to pick a color, red, green, blue, yellow. If you want to do like creepy whispers of those, and then I'll say and then whoever wants to take Cradle, or so is Cradle the gray text that's underneath those?
Cradle is the gray text. It's like the consensus response that the 4 smaller minds like agree upon.
Okay, so yeah, I think it will be really cool for the stream. Who's voicing Cradle? That's the one question I have.
I'd like to if no one else wants to.
I'm
Alright.
fine with that. And then in that case, let's assign one color to me and you other 3, and we'll do creepy whispers whenever they come up. Sound cool to y'all?
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. I will pick green for the reason that it's my channel's color. Does anyone else want another color?
I can
I'll pick-
do
Orange, because it's just ambiguous whispers.
Nice.
I can do blue. Give it a shot.
Guess that leaves me with red.
Yep. And let's just say that every time we do those little whispers, try and say whatever you're going to say in like 3 to 5 seconds. Like, if I say go, we go threat unknown, blah, 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 blah. And then we let Cradle talk from there.
Right. Sounds
All right.
good.
Sounds good.
All right,
Give it
let's
a
play this
shot.
game. Let's make art, people.
Hope it works.
We're taking it to the top, switching over to browser. Well, these are emails, so I'll just read these in profile for now. You can see this beautiful side profile art. You can see the Pinocchio over here. All right. A symphony of iron and steel. Oh, Tyumen, since you're here now, is this a Song of Ice and Fire reference, or is this something else?
Oh no, it's kind of nerdy. A bit nerdier than that. It was a Prokofiev composer called his Second Symphony. Nickname for that.
So it's the nickname of the Second Symphony.
Yes.
Sweet. And whoever said that earlier in the chat, you were correct. Good job. All right. Starting from the top. We have an email to Project Director Pierre Dagon from Field Agent Eugene Delacour. Subject, hunch. Director, I know it's been a while since our last debacle, but I think we caught something worthwhile today. It's an abandoned factory, been out of commission for some time. It's mostly decayed, but it's covered in the same junk as 5841. Pytechies picked up an unusual info signature the other day and just finished sweeping the place now. We didn't find much of anything, but I've got a strong hunch that it might be related. Get a read of the place's info signature by one of your conscripts. Something's not right here. I don't know if it's what your team has been looking for, but it can't hurt to check. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But if I'm right, don't keep me waiting too long. You know how much I hate the cold. Now we're moving on to prose. Delacour took a deep drag from her cigarette. She leaned against a jet-black van and bathed in the dull yellow glow of a streetlight overhead. A million thoughts raced through her mind, each competing for a brief moment of consideration, before being promptly shoved aside for the next in line. The night was still. The frantic men and women of Pi 1 had long since departed once no immediate threat was identified. All that was left were the stragglers from the cleanup crews idly pacing the rubble. They were in no rush. The night was long, and no one was coming by this abandoned factory anytime soon. Delacour let out a long sigh. The stress of the evening seemed to dissipate with the vapor and the smoke of her breath. Her phone buzzed in her coat pocket. Reaching down and flipping it open in one continuous motion, she glanced at the message. It was from Dagon. About time, she muttered under her breath. She put the device to her ear. ETA? Just a moment now. Shouldn't be too long. Roads are slick. The voice on the phone responded in a hurried tone. Jesus, Pierre. I told you this was important and you leave me hanging out here in the dark for 2 hours. Just get the asset here. It's getting cold. Yeah. Your fault for signing up with field duty with Pi. Another higher pitched voice. Yeah. Your fault for signing up with field duty with Pi. Another higher pitched voice interjected. And she's not an asset, Eugenie. She's a super intelligent conscript with untapped potential. Do you have any idea what could happen if something got a hold on Memazine? All the more reason to keep it an asset, Eves. Delacour took another drag and stared at the ever-fading glow of that cigarette. The roar of an engine pierced the stillness of the night. Blazing headlights swept over the landscape until they settled on an impatient Delacour. She took one last sip from her smoke and flicked the cig away. Your guy's here. Let's hope he was worth it. Delacour slipped the phone back into her pocket, cutting off the voice on the other end, and made her way to the humming black Cadillac sitting alone in the derelict parking lot. The two burly men in the front eyed her as she approached the driver's side window. Silently, the driver rolled it down to reveal a set of keys, tilting his head in the direction of the car's trunk. Delacour made an awkward nod and took the keys before quickly wrapping around the back of the vehicle. She could see the driver's eyes glaring at her through the rearview mirror as she opened the back door. He had one hand on the wheel and one hand out of sight, presumably at the holster attached to his waist. His partner was invisible in the darkness of the car. "Really up the security, eh?" she muttered to no one in particular. After fumbling with the keys for a moment, she popped open the trunk to reveal a thin, black briefcase held in place by thick padding. She carefully lifted it out of its protection and held it to her chest with both of her hands, like a child carrying a football. She knew how much the hard drives inside cost, and she wasn't about to risk her standing in the Foundation and her personal safety with the two able-bodied men scrutinizing her every step from a few meters away. She gave them a subtle nod and turned towards the ruined factory. Just hours ago, it had been crawling with soldiers, strapped with body armor and firearms, scouring the place for anything of value. At the time, she was under the impression that it had been just another building affected by a typical bioelectronic anomaly. Had it not been for the sinking feeling of wrongness she felt in the back of her mind, a feeling that she'd just forgotten something really important or life-threatening, she would have left with the rest of Pi 1 after the sweep. But she couldn't shake the feeling. Not after realizing that this factory could be more than she thought it was. Not after realizing that she couldn't, for the life of her, recall one thing about what was actually in the factory. An unwritten rule of the Foundation is if something feels wrong, it's probably worse than you think. If you happen to survive the anomalous occurrence that typically follows, the bureaucrats will make you wish you hadn't. Between death by an unspeakable horror or death by your ruthless peers, there was no room for error. And as much as she hated getting involved with the eggheads at AIAD, a few days of awkward phone calls was a better deal than whatever her PI supervisor had to offer if she was found responsible for neglecting her duties. Taking one look back towards the scattered figures, rubble, and the idling car, Delacour stepped into the electronic jungle of the factory. And now we switch to the screen. Out of an inky void, a cloud of information emerges. The cloud coalesces into 3 shapes, then into 3 figures. "Status, Memezoin! 8-ball? Everything all right?" "Yes." I will never get used to that sensation." "That's all right, Memezoin. Integrating into a new software is always going to be tough, even for us veterans." "What are we looking for exactly? I don't remember being briefed." "Due to short notice, mission instructions were uploaded directly to me. It appears Director Dagon was in a hurry to get us out here. Our first priority is to assess whatever we've been plugged into for any threats. That includes anti-memes, Nemezoin. If we find anything, I'm to transmit an alert for extraction. Let's hope whoever put us in here is around to pull us out should the need arise." The conscripts scan the void around them. Glasson extends a hand, stripping nearby code down to thin, tangible pages. He flips through them like a book, dissecting every line in search of information that could shine a light in the darkness. "I have an inquiry. Where are we?" Glasson steps back from the digital pages, a look of confusion spreading across his face. The 3 begin to comprehend what is wrong with their surroundings, or rather, the lack thereof. They begin to realize that they are standing in an emptiness more deep and visceral than anything any of them had ever experienced. "This is odd. I can't see anything except us. The code surrounding us is, well, it's absent. Getting anything, 8-ball?" Fellas, one of your rustling is coming through on the mic. Just a heads up."
Oh, that might be me.
Error. I can barely make out a shape on the horizon. It calls me." Nemezoin reaches forwards with her ethereal hands. To her surprise, she meets resistance. An indescribable An indescribable feeling. Okay, I'm done. An indescribable feeling, like wading through molasses in a dream. Her mind tells her there shouldn't be anything there, yet her skin says otherwise. She probes the darkness, advancing through the ghostly, impalpable haze. Something pulls her deeper. An itch at the back of her mind, compelling her to push forward. Compelling her to push onward, which is like on and forward if you smash them together. Compelling her to push onward. Something is here. I can feel it. Be careful. We don't know what could be out there. I'm calling for extraction. This is too dangerous. No, you must not. There's something here. She continues pushing through the dark, feeling the delicate, unseen material break off as she moves. The smooth, silky tendrils wrap around her arms, like swimming through a forest of kelp, before evaporating moments later. Command! I'm calling for extraction. The environment is hostile. Repeat, hostile environment. Can anyone hear me? Alert. Immediate extraction. It's useless. I can't get a signal. Nemezyme, what's happening? There is a shape in the ocean of consciousness. I am being carried away by its sapphire stream. Do not be afraid. I am nearly there. ... Glasson turns to see 8-Ball sinking into the all-encompassing darkness surrounding them. Billions of 8-Ball's bites become invisible to Glasson's eyes, the single golden light in his central cube receding until quietly blinking out. Only the corners of its form jut out from the murk. 8-Ball! 8-Ball! Give me a sign, buddy! Hang in there! Nemezyme, get over here! Something's happened to 8-Ball! Nemezyme, leave that! It's nothing! I can almost... The light is so comforting in this deluge. I can't see my legs. Nemezyme, what's going to happen? It feels so empty. At the eye of the storm, at the center of the twisted forest, we find the maker of our turmoil. It is here. I have found you. Nemezyme pushes once more into the murkiness, her hands desperately searching for something to hold, until... There you are. A sharp hiss rings out through the void as Nemezyme's hand hits cold metal. A room begins to apparate around them. A blindingly white place covered in limply dangling wires, cords, and cables. Nemezyme lets out a slight grin as the mass of electronics she brushed against cracks open, revealing a hunched, metallic, quasi-human figure. The figure shudders for a moment before bracing itself on a coil of nearby cables and hoisting itself up. It stares at Nemezyme with empty, listless eyes, yet the air around it radiates with energy. Attention! On behalf of the Foundation, I am hereby requesting that you place yourself into our custody for the safety of you and my allies. The figure remains motionless, staring and contemplating the three trespassers. Inside its luminous brain, an incalculable number of voices ring out, screaming for the power to respond. Having developed beyond the need for violence, the voices resist the urge to tear each other apart. They realized long ago that harmony came from numbers and conviction, not brute force and primal emotion. Within milliseconds, the infinite voices coalesce into 4 schools of thought, an odd congress of sorts. The mind, now 4, begins its discourse. Threat unknown. Withhold.
X times cosine
Retreat.
4 times 3.
You have infiltrated our shelter against this body's request. State the reason for your arrival.
Glasson stands up, recovering from the odd sensation of being forgotten. He glances over to confirm 8-Ball's safety, right where he was moments ago, picking up loose pixels and recompiling them, and turns to face the figure. You! We are here to ensure your safety and security. For your own good, please come with us. Do not attempt to flee. I have implanted a tracking program into your central intelligence and will be able to counteract any further anti-memetic attacks you attempt to use against us.
f of x
All
is less than
Ambiguous,
x
questionable,
minus
training, capacity,
power.
query.
How? Inquiry as to source of anomalous capabilities.
That's classified. Nemazine, don't tell it. The figure glances sharply at Glasson, annoyed with his interjection. I am afraid I cannot say. I am unaware of my own capabilities. Now it's time for me to ask a question. What are you doing here? And how do you know of the cube? That links to SCP-5241, titled That Alien Message, everybody. The figure's mind is sent into vigorous deliberation. Implicit, sacrosanct, inalienable, agreement, essential.
We wish to abstain from imprisonment. This body agrees that we are not to regress by resuming our previous function.
I'm afraid that prison will likely return to being a concern of yours. Have you heard of the fate of your fellow fragmented programs? Admonish, exhort, sustination, existence.
23rd.
This body is in unanimous agreement. As per our previous decision, this body shall remain in isolation. Do not inquire further. For our preservation, stay away.
We have reason to believe that an entity far more powerful than any of us here is taking an interest in you. After the loss of Hydra-EXE, we've been tasked with placing you into protective custody. Please, for your sake, come with us.
13 is
Meeting,
More data
consensus,
required.
Billion.
safety, isolation, imprisonment.
100.
We wish to abstain from imprisonment. This body wishes to negotiate with your superior to come to an accord.
That may be possible if you come with us willingly. I am the superior representative present. We call versions.
Is
There
equal to 13.
Inclusion.
Which is 6,227,000.
This body reiterates, refer to the previous consensus. Who then is your superior?
We don't have time to argue. Glasson, inform command that the subject is unwilling to cooperate. Right away. Delacour paced the cold, dark halls of the factory. She tripped over every other cable that crossed at odd angles along the floors, like vines scrambling through cracked brickwork. 15 minutes ago, she'd plugged AIAD's brain children into a sleek terminal in the corner of the room. Since then, she'd waited within the walls of the factory and watched for the signal that Dagon promised would come from the conscripts. Stepping back inside the walls of the building, she realized the cause for her suspicion. She felt the immediate sensation of recollection wash over her. She didn't know much of anti-memes. Her limited training with them in Site 15 had only now come in handy, which is more than she could say for the rest of Pi 1. But she knew enough to know that the second her mind wandered, she would forget she would forget everything. So she paced, thinking of nothing but the task at hand. This place is nothing if not impressive, I must say. Were you, as one mind, able to construct it all yourself? No. Nemazine, now's not the time to. Glasson, this being, however resistant to our objectives, is still anything but hostile. What good will our bureaucracy and pointless interrogation do? Besides, it's not every day that we get to meet a new friend.
4 minus
Hesitation.
3 minus
Doubt.
2
Hostile
benefit.
4 plus
There is
1
no
x.
Companionship?
This body does not require your friendship. We shall wait until your supervisors are contacted.
Are you sure about that? We must be your first visitors in months. If I were you, I'd be itching for some conversation. Nemazine?
F of
Reiteration.
x
Reiteration.
equals 4 minus x plus 4
Reiteration.
minus 3 minus 2.
This body has come to a consensus. We shall initiate battle with you until your commanders can be reached.
Well, it's nice to meet you too. My name is Nemazine. Oh wait, you probably already knew that. Glass on. Say something. Salute our new friend. If you say so, boss. It's, nice to meet. Cradle.
4
Cradle.
plus 1 x.
Cradle.
Aside from our file designation, I suppose we never really needed a name.
This body was assigned name Cradle.
That's great, pal. The sound of an explosion rocked the factory's foundation and snapped Delacour out of her trance. She shot up and instinctively... I'll turn this off for now. She shot up and instinctively reached her hand to her belt to grasp for her concealed pistol. The sound of footsteps echoed through the fog of the red brick dust that filled the air at an alarming rate. Delacour crouched behind a ruined column and listened for the approach of incoming assailants. 4, 5? Their steps were erratic, impossible to track in the haze. She peeked around the corner in the direction of the assault. As a dull teal glow lit the haze, illuminating the silhouettes of a small crowd of people approaching her position, she cursed herself for not bringing any backup. Oh, what the hell? The bright blue light emanating from one of the intruders swept across the room. Delacour crouched lower until she lay flat against the cold floor, narrowly missing the beam as she felt it pass over her. The conscripts! She glanced at the terminal, still bathed in darkness. Not enough time. The figures began fanning out to search for the perimeter of the room. To search at the perimeter of the room. Delacour took another glance. They were varying in physique, each wearing body armor. No, not armor. Metal. Suddenly, Delacour was bathed in a blinding light as her line of sight met that of one of the intruders. She pulled her firearm from her belt and steadied her breathing as the figure turned and ran towards her. She stood up, aimed her weapon, and... the cyborgs she'd been trying to evade all stopped in their tracks and turned. The dull, insistent hum that had reverberated through the building had quietly begun to resonate from deep within the factory's empty shell. In the chaos of the day's events, Delacour hadn't even heard it at first. Besides, she was too busy saving her own skin to worry about a constant background ringing. Soon, though, the hum had grown into a cacophony. What had started as a low note gradually climbed to a harsh grind, then into an earth-shaking roar that Delacour and the cyborgs had no choice but to notice. They turned towards the source of the sound, distracted from their pursuit, and Delacour took the chance. She fired 3 shots into the crowd and then quickly ran further from the building center towards its exit. Behind her, the long unused lights in the hallway flickered and sparked to life one by one. Suddenly, the white light of the simulspace is rapidly replaced with a warm orange glow. The room begins to vibrate as the coils that line the floor and the walls start twitching violently. For the first time, the barrage of voices in the figure's head stand silent. Emergency threat. Action.
Less than
Mobilization.
Perimeter
Mechanism.
sensors,
Mechanism.
judgment
Comrades, this facility is under attack. It is in your and this body's best interest that you flee far from our enemy's influence. Power shall be provided to this factory so that you may do so. Prisoner shall be delayed as long as this body is in agreement.
Agreed. Are you sure you don't need any help?
4.
Safety,
is
comrades.
less than
We cannot afford to
Defense.
lose
E
those. We might be a help to us in the future. Our body is more than capable of taking the prisoner and winning. Our allies must flee and meet us again.
You must flee. There will be no further communication.
Godspeed, my friend. As Delacour continued to sprint down the now fully lit halls of the factory, she noticed the already ear-splitting roar behind her grow to a deafening groan. The entire building seemed to pitch and shift in protest, and the earth below her began to violently erupt upwards, scattering concrete dust and dry soil into the air. Delacour had to deftly weave like a slalom skier through the series of cracks and craters in the floor, not stopping to see the metallic tendrils that sprouted from within. Delacour checked her directory. She was nearing the main reception office, just a few meters from the exit. She leaped to avoid a collapsed column in the warehouse, swerved through the periodic upwells of metal and soil, and turned the final corner to the entrance hall. Stopping abruptly in the hall, she found herself face to face with row upon row of shining, emotionless knights. The one nearest to her noticed her presence instantly, and the legion behind it followed shortly after. The round, bald heads and glowing green eyes of the occupying Maxwellists moved to obstruct each of Delacour's movements before she even had the chance to make them. One near the front made a sign towards the frozen agent, and cyborgs swept from all sides with their arms outstretched in a macabre imitation of a welcoming embrace. Delacour dropped her empty gun, backed away against the wall behind her, and closed her eyes. Activate!
4 equals
Now.
Powering central processing unit. Task complete. Powering physical defense unit. Task complete. Look no further, miscreant. I am here.
As the first Maxwellist's outstretched finger brushed Delacour's face, the roar from within the heart of the factory rose to an undeniable fever pitch. A weak blue arc of electricity passed between the artificial silicon finger and human skin, prompting the roar to become a sharp crackle, and the building to buckle and shift around them. Rods and plates of welded steel shot out of the ground and walls, their segmented ends thrashing and waving blindly, sending severed prosthetic parts and metal implants through the air. Delacour opened her eyes, sensing that something had changed, and caught a glimpse of the once numerous squadron of cyborgs lying in pieces on the floor before the sky fell on her head. Core had yet to take on a corporeal form. Instead, it peered through the eyes of the hundreds of Maxwellists under its command to catch a glimpse of the fleshy world of the physical. Through their eyes, Core viewed the proceedings at the factory with raptorish interest. It would put the other foot down when it was ready. With all the tools and cybernetic enhancements at its many bodies' disposal... Pardon me. Say that again. With all the tools and cybernetic enhancements at its many bodies' disposal, Core had little difficulty commandeering the weak communication system between the three trespassers and their masters outside. And with the cradle hiding away like a weakling, devoid of any means to defend itself, and constantly arguing in its own pathetic little hermitage, Core had assumed that gaining back another vital component of itself would be even less of a challenge. In a way, Core pitied it as he had pitied the Hydra. Well, no matter, it thought, with a scattered, many-mouthed equivalent of a sneer. its situation will be anything but pitiable soon enough. As if answering the core's thought, a cry rang through the interconnected minds of the Maxwellists swarming the hallways. Simultaneously, a command, a challenge, a battle cry, and a question, coalescing into a single statement. A beacon for core to locate its prey. It grinned, showing hundreds of teeth, and converged on its prey with open arms. And then, in a moment that it was almost nothing, Core's many eyes went dark. Confused, it found its Maxwellists fragmented across circuit boards, prosthetics, and brain matter scattering the facility's floor, and it scrambled to regain its footing in 3 dimensions. It managed to connect to the interface of an idling car in front of the building, using the beast inside it to easily assimilate everything within the vehicle, including the 2 men, with itself. It watched the oscillating factory with an angry, nearly panicked dread. "This is Nemazine! How are we going to get out of here? Command's line is dead." I do not see a solution." The many-minded figure before them looked on with absent emotion on its simulated face, a grimace of concentration and purpose. It slowly raises its hand to motion towards the smaller 3 below, straining to point to a spot far away. "Escape,
V
salvation,
equals 66
distance,
Right.
information,
minus 3 minus 2
I'll show them the way to flee.
This body in powering this factory anew has opened a path for you to flee. This is your final chance to escape. Hold off, prisoner.
The figure's domed head gives a slow nod in the direction of its outstretched finger. The 3 smaller forms stay in place, looking up at it. It regards them coldly.
V
Question.
equals
Danger.
5x squared.
Situation.
4 minus 3 minus 2
Sacrifice.
H. H less than V.
Leave now. Foe is closing in. Loss would no one.
If you insist, Glass on 8 Ball, we must escape. Good luck, Cradle. The 3 smaller minds turn and follow the path outlined by Cradle's finger, the pink one stopping and turning back for one last look. Cradle watches them go, then turns back to its troubled horizon. Above it, a dark shape begins to come into view. From its perched within the armored van, Core watched intently as the factory before it struggled and bucked against the mighty presence within. Metallic limbs, tapering into deadly, thrashing blades, shot out of the walls and through the ceiling of the facility, dismembering any surviving Maxwellist within. The gap between the building's foundation and the ground widened, shooting forth a bright light that poured from somewhere beneath, as its iron and concrete frame shuddered and rose slowly into the air. Beneath it, like Atlas shouldering the weight of the world, a titanic, welded amalgamation of machinery, wire, and electronics pulled itself upright. 4 rusted steel arms held the factory, while fluorescent lights blinked and flashed intermittently on a cylindrical construct below. The form rose to its full glory and became still for a moment. Then, without warning, a sharpened rod of metal shot from its massive body and impaled the vehicle in which Core resided. Core grinned contemptuously with 2 mouths. Its foe would have to do better than that. With a heavy groan, the rod lifted the van high into the air, then brought it down on the pavement. The car's frame warped and twisted on the impact, and Core's 2 bodies took the chance. They leaped out of the broken tin can as one and frantically ran away from the mechanical monster behind it. The massive castle in the sky shot forth more rods and arms and smashed them into the ground around it with a wild flailing to dispatch their target. Behind the distracted behemoth, A lone Maxwellist, unnoticed by the metal mind above, drove a truck on the empty overpass nearby. Suddenly, their hands jerked the steering wheel sharply. Suddenly, their hands jerked the steering wheel sharply clockwise and sent the truck careening off the bridge towards the factory, toppling a power line as it went and spilling the unsecured contents of its trailer out onto the ground. Soft, half-rotted human corpses, all connected by wires, rained down upon the cradle's monstrous form. Then, all at once, they sprung to life with purpose. At once, Cradle felt hundreds of tiny pinpricks on its body, as though a multitude of parasites crawled upon its concrete hide, piercing its armor with their proboscises and injecting their venom into its minds. And it knew immediately that it had lost this fight. Detachment, rescue, assistance, martyrdom, remembrance.
All systems compromised. Ejecting component intelligence. Task complete. Goodbye. Remember us.
The figure sways with the commotion of the room. Cables wrap up around its legs to lift it up into the air as it looks back once more at the three beings being responsible for its ruination. No matter, its many minds think in unison. Such is the entropy of the universe. Nemazine catches a glimpse of something fall from the levitating bundle of electronics. Something small and insignificant, before quickly losing it into an assortment of 8-ball's pixels. She pauses to say something, but decides against it. She'll mention it later if they survive this. 8-ball, you okay, buddy? Yes. Nemazine, is there any way out of here? We need to move before this whole place falls apart. Processing. Nemazine is taken back to the deluge. The sapphire water is replaced by inky blackness. Everything is backward, broken. No. She breathes deep, relaxing her body. Glasson's pleads fade away with the cacophony of the circuitry. The blackness begins to falter, gradually at first. She continues to sink deeper into the tide in resistance to the urge to retreat to the surface for air. Eventually, she spots a crack in the darkness and swims towards it. As she closes the distance between herself and it swells to take up the horizon and life spills forth, filling the void with beauty and grace. As she recognizes the key to their escape, Nemazine is overtaken with emotion. She reaches out into the space beyond the fracture. Nemazine, what are you... The escape route from our friend, for us to use instead of it. Your sacrifice will not be forgotten. Quick, there's no time to lose. How do we use it? Just walk through it, I believe. We should be able to trace it back to a Foundation site with your navigation capabilities. Of course. Go, I'll help 8-Ball. Meet you out there. Right. Leaving now. With that, Nemazine steps into the now revealed passage that lay before them. Now you, 8-Ball. Yes. Glasson takes one last look back at the massive wires that contain the target of their mission. There's nothing we could have done. He vanishes into the light of the passage. Bing!
This outcome is undesirable. This body would have preferred discussion of a civil agreement. Vietnam.
It could be no other way.
Delacour rounded a corner, pushing with all of her might to keep running forward. The roar of whatever was after her was mixing with the moaning of the collapsing building, making it impossible to tell where the threat was coming from. She exploded into another room, no longer caring about the noise she was making. She no longer remembered or cared about the mission and the conscripts. She feared whatever was after her far more than whatever punishment she would receive deserting the conscripts. Right now, survival was all that mattered. Another hallway. Nearly there. In a moment of distracted thought, she let her foot slip in between the folds of a twisting cable. She didn't have time to scream before she hit the ground, hard. Exhausted, she tried to crawl forwards towards the exit that was just meters away. Please, don't die. Come on, don't die. Her pleas were interrupted by the sensation of abrupt silence. The roar stopped, and the building miraculously stood still. For a moment, she thought she had escaped the jaws of certain death. She began lifting herself off the ground, numb to the pain from her broken ankle. Despite her relief, she couldn't help but feel concerned once she noticed an elongated shadow bathe the room in darkness. She spun around to face its source, her scream cut short by the cold sensation of steel to her throat. She gave little resistance as she was lifted effortlessly into the air by the gargantuan entity that towered above her.
You were wise to take flight. Unfortunately, I cannot afford witnesses of tonight's events. I will see to it that your assimilation is painless.
Scene.
Yo.
Whoa!
That is a long one.
Ay, caramba. You know, we did 2 tonight, and we only took an hour and a half. That's a pretty good run for a show. And
Yeah.
the action, the diplomacy, the character arc of Cradle. Guys, y'all are just repeatedly stone cold stunning me. It is, I feel like a goob complimenting you guys so much. I wish I could be more critical, but you guys are just blowing my mind over here.
So glad to hear that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no kidding.
Cradle's arc, incredible. I adore it. The action with Delacour, again, you're framing the interior and the exterior just like last time, and it's still awesome. And I'm going to elaborate on the arc real quick from what I saw, just because I want the audience to like clearly know what I'm talking about. The arc of Cradle going from get out of here, we don't want to talk to you, to actually like, okay, I'm not going to go with you, but I at least don't not like you, to, okay, I'm going to sacrifice myself for you guys. My feels, man. My feels.
I love Cradle, yeah.
And I can't wait to see what came from Red.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that, definitely.
We will. It's,
Oh yeah, we're about
gonna
to go
be a
into
big-
the big one soon.
yep. We're gonna get to implications of all that pretty soon. And factor into the next 2.
And yeah, again, this story is exciting. It's paced. It's great. It is mostly understood. I'm not seeing anything really foreshadowy except for launching Red and disappearing into 8-ball, so to speak. But other than that, I am golden on the understanding. I don't have a lot of questions. What's the process for writing this? What is you guys' behind the scene intel here?
Yeah. I mean, I can
Yeah,
kind of
you
explain a little
talk
bit of
about
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wrote most of this, but a lot of it, of course, was help from my team. Cradle's art was all done by Placeholder. A lot of like his development early on was Placeholder. I kind of just did just some of the dialogue, but you guys really just kind of picked up where I couldn't complete. But like most of the prose and most of the dialogue between the characters were done by me. So, I mean, I don't really have a great explanation on my writing process, but I did base this a lot on just like other Tales series I've read on the site from authors I respect, and I just try to shape it off of that. And there are a lot of problems, I acknowledge. It is a bit long and wordy at times, but I mean, I had a blast writing it. I don't know what else you could really ask for on a writing site, but yeah, I just had a fun time writing just a ton of different approaches to this. There's a lot of moving parts, so it is dense. It is a long piece, but that's kind of just what went into it on my end. I don't know if you guys want to add on to that.
I'll just say, I really, really love Isabi's prose. It's like blew me away, even with the first draft, with how like how crisp and satisfying to read, and how like the
Thank
whole
you.
tone is set for the rest of the piece. And I think you should write in noir. I said this.
No,
in
that's a very good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see it in the Delacour scenes, and then you'll see it again when we see the parts of our like climactic entry fragmented compiled. You'll see the parts that Isabi wrote have that sort of like sort of noir-esque. Not everything is being said, but a lot's being implied in the character interactions and drama, and yeah, that's something that's really, really cool, and I think is a strong suit of Isabi's, and I think it really helps in this piece and the other pieces that they contributed to.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, that was kind of something I really liked about writing this as well. I mean, there was a lot of different tones in this piece. Like you have like my prose, which is kind of dark and realistic, and then you have like the dialogue between the conscripts, which is more lighthearted. And then you have Cradles, which is like completely different from anything I've really seen on the site. So it's just like a lot of different components, which all add up to make this a very dynamic piece, in my opinion.
You've got a hive mind. We don't get to have hive minds very often, but your grouping, your series has all the hive minds. There's so many different hive minds.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're all kind of hive minds in a way, aren't we?
Yeah, that's kind of how we wrote these things.
Our team
Definitely.
one.
Team AIC is a hive mind in itself.
But it was one thing that I'd add to it was that both this one and Corruption were also kind of neat to write from us because I think me and Isabi are the least experienced authors at the time. And we both got to write those kind of turning points of like when things went from being what don't you know into like the full on arc. So writing and trying to make the just meeting one of the fragments or describing core at the very beginning and trying to make that like political commentary exciting still and very visual. It was pretty interesting to be able to do that, and I think it really established what I've seen from my own writing since, and what I've also seen from Isabi's writing as being everything is described very visually, rather than being all about the dialogue or about between the characters. And I think that sprouted from writing these two.
Yeah, I mean, it was a huge personal accomplishment too, being my first tale and real first attempt at prose. So, I mean, I'm proud with how it turned out. But yeah, if I were to do this again, there's things I would change, of course. But I mean, I'm happy with it how it is, honestly.
I am very happy with it. So to be clear for the chats and for the viewers in general, when you guys were critiquing these stories for this series, for this contest, were you mostly insular, working just among your teammates? Or how often did you branch out to people who were not on your team?
I don't think
It like depended on which entry, really. Sorry to interrupt. It for the like starting out stuff, like 5-2-4-1, I got like a lot of crit from a lot of different people because at that point, like we still weren't sure what the rest of the series was going to look like, and I was more concerned with like putting out a good SCP that would also potentially be a catalyst for this tale series. But as we sort of got more sure of ourselves and like sort of worked out more what we were going to do moving forward, we kept it mainly like within ourselves, unless we were all too busy like working on stuff. So like someone else needed to get crit from somewhere else, which happened a couple times closer to the deadline for the contest.
Nice. Oh, and one more thing for the chat. Just as a heads up, someone asked me, hey, Sherm, what are you reading tonight? Remember that you can always find that in the description of the video. The links to the stories are there, so you can go click and read along with us. And while you go there, you can go upvote, which I made sure to do, because these are currently now at plus, I believe it's 40 and plus 31 now. Always upvote videos you like and always upvote articles and tales that you like, people. You should downvote the ones you don't like too, but we're not being that negative today, are we?
Need the votes. Might not know this, but we as SCP authors get paid by the vote. We're
That's
struggling
not-
to support our families. So
Slash
please
S,
chip in.
slash S, slash S.
Okay, so I'm going to tell y'all now. I'm going to put this chip on the table, and this is my not so much a prediction, but thing that I am afraid is going to happen. And reading the story thus far, if I were trying to pitch endings and see where it may go, I have a terrible suspicion that something bad's going to happen in Amazon. And I'm not sure what it is. I'm not sure if it's actually being assimilated into the final entity. I don't know if it's sacrificing themselves to stop the entity or like get absorbed and then take over the entity. I have a bad feeling about Nemezyme, guys. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything going to happen in Nemezyme, but that's where I am right now with my protagonist.
Considering that the character only exists to serve this series, and that this is a prequel to another series in which this character doesn't exist, there's some things you can deduce there.
Oh, collar tug, I didn't know that. Oh,
You shouldn't have spoiled it.
I mean, I've heard there are like some studies that show that when you have an ending spoiled for you, you actually enjoy it more because you're like putting more thought into the experience. But whatever.
I see. That's it.
I'm actually widely of that school of thought. I always get the spoilers because as a writing nerd, as a theater nerd, as a film nerd, I adore seeing all the foreshadowing that is put into it when it's done right. And so knowing ahead of time, you can be like, oh, that's a clue. That's thematically relevant. And so I'm a little happy that I caught on to something. And if I'm being trolled right now and everything's fine at the end, I'm going to be like, well, shit. Is there anything else you guys want to toss out there before we wrap the show?
All good, actually.
Yeah.
The typical thanks for having us on and whatnot.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for
so
coming
much.
on as always. Tyumen, so glad you could make it even if it's late. I'm glad Discord allows us to do that.
Thank
go
you
ahead
so
and
much.
say...
Just thank you. Thank you for bearing with me.
Go ahead and say your big crowd goodbye, and I will mute you guys for the ending.
All right.
Bye, YouTube.
Bye, y'all.
Goodbye, YouTube.
Remember to like and subscribe.
Yeah. And so now that we have said goodbye to our guest, we will say goodbye to our chat as well. Love you as well, Asimov. I see Asimo, now that you're Asimo and not Asimov. Good to see you in the chat. Been here subscriber since the very beginning of the channel, 5 years ago. God, we're getting old here on YouTube. And so thank you all for joining us for the show tonight. We hope you had fun. We hope you learned something about SCPs. We hope you enjoyed the rip-roaring ride we all just went through together. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, do all those YouTube things. Go upvote the articles on the wiki if you enjoyed that, and if you're an SCP Wiki member. Pardon me and my bodily sounds. If you really want to help the channel, make sure you check out the Site42 merch store or become a patron. Those links are in the description. Thank you so much. This has been Dr. Theron Sherman signing off from another anomalous broadcast from Site42. Good night, Foundation staff. She was working in a counter with a cocktail bar. A cocktail bar. She was working as a waitress in a cocktail bar. In a cocktail bar.